Well, hello guys. I don't know what happened with the live stream. I think it got messed up a little bit, and that was partly my fault. Let's see here. Well, hello and welcome to the Car Care Nut channel. Let's start this live stream. And I think this live stream got a little, there was an error with YouTube and it changed the link on me. So I'll wait for a little bit until you guys are here. And I started a little bit early intentionally. Let's see if we can get anybody on the chat. Okay, so the first question we got here is, does the coolant fluid circulate year-round whenever I have a front and rear heaters set to maximum or they're off entirely? My case is a second generation Sienna 2017 LE. So the coolant is gonna, in that engine, that's a 2G RFE, it's gonna circulate year-round, really. You're not gonna get... you don't have a coolant shutoff valve or you don't have any of that. It's just going to circulate year-round pretty much. Another one is my rear disc brake protection plate is rusted and completely gone. I checked the price and labor and it's too much money. Why? So the backing plate is notorious to rust on these, and it's gonna happen. That's common with rust belt cars. So honestly, I wouldn't really replace it at all. It's just one of those things that that get messed up, and with time they just fall apart. And really, all it does is protect the rotor a little bit. And then with this one, you got to pull the bearing out, and that'll start all kinds of problems. So I would personally just leave it alone. It's not really worth the job, and call it a day. If you're doing a bearing one day, then that would be a good time to do it. But otherwise, I would just let it go. All right, guys. I think this live stream is starting a little slower than usual because of partly on my end and partly on YouTube's end, because something happened with the link and it got changed up, and I don't think anybody got the notification for this one. So I'll give you guys a little bit of time to log in. I'm seeing guys are starting to come in now. Well, can you restore my Supra for free? I don't know how you describe free. Free is going to be a relative term here. With your Supra, what are we looking at? How bad it is? If it's a newer Supra, it might not be need much restoration. So BMW is going to need a lot of work. But yeah, I know you're just kidding. I appreciate you. I appreciate you coming in. I really appreciate you watching the video. We'll just give time for everybody to log in. I see that they're starting to come in. And in case you're watching this live stream later, I'll start with a few things. The email situation, I've gotten bad again because of the Forerunner series. I kind of stopped doing the email response because I was focused on filming that series. And honestly, the Forerunner series was very hard to film because it took a lot of research and a lot of writing and a lot of time to really with the filming. I had the truck only for 1 week, but it took a little bit of time, and that kind of took me away from the core email responding and social media. So I'm a little behind again, but I'll try to make time this week. I'm on vacation, if you would, from YouTube because I'm just putting videos right now, taking a little bit of time. But let's start. We got one question here. So Al says, 2019 Forerunner, the oil filter housing plastic. Seen mod using the metal housing. Any opinion on the plastic? Honestly, this is a question that's asked a lot. The plastic housing is not an issue. I don't really see them breaking or causing issues or any of that type. However, one thing that damages them is when you over tighten it, and then the next time you go to take it off, they're really hard, and sometimes you really have to use an impact. There's no other way, and they tend to break. And when that happens, you'll get leaks and all kinds of problems. I wouldn't really upgrade to the metal one, but if you're doing the oil changes yourself, I would torque it to spec and call it a day. You're not going to have issues if you torque it to spec. But if you want to switch to the metal one, that's fine, but make sure you use an OEM one. Don't go with an after, because I've seen aftermarket ones leak because they're not the same quality where they fit perfectly, and they tend to leak after time. So Amun says, what do you think? Do you think Honda makes better reliable cars? Well, that's a relative question. Honda makes perfectly fine cars. I'm not an expert on Hondas by any chance, by any way. I've worked with Honda actually before Toyota, but not for a long time, for a very short time. They make very fine cars, but I think Toyota tend to take the edge over them in most things. Some cars, no, they're more reliable. But lately, I've been hearing a lot of problems with the Honda. So I would still say they're probably the top, Honda and Toyota. They make the finer cars, but I think Toyota has an edge on reliability a little bit over Honda. So let's see here. Tom says, can you review the 2021 Sienna? Yes, absolutely. So sorry, Tony, not Tom. So Tony, after I film the Forerunner, pretty soon I'm going to start filming the Sienna. Actually, I usually film in blocks. I'll get a car, I'll make a whole series on it, and then do a few in between videos. But then the next one programmed is actually the 2021 Toyota Sienna, where you will see a lot of videos on it, and in-depth review, different reviews, and all kinds of stuff planned for it. So you will see that soon. When I say soon, it might be a month or so, because the Forerunner series is long, but you will see it soon. So Javier says, what is the best scan tool for my 2015 Toyota Corolla that can show live data for the transmission fluid temperature? So I am in the process of looking at some scan tools. I reviewed the Carista. I think the Carista is a great option, but it doesn't have live data. And the manufacturer did say that they're looking into making a live data one. And I told them that would really make their scan tool stand out, because they have customization and ability to read all modules, but it misses live data. Now, the Blue Driver is really good for live data, but that's not as comprehensive. And I'm trying to get one now to make kind of a comparison between the two. But so far, I have not found a scan tool that can do everything TechStream can. TechStream is the official Toyota scan tool. I'm trying to find one that is like DIY friendly, budget friendly, not cost $400 or $500 or more. Of course, at that point, it doesn't make sense for DIY. But if you can find one that is, $100, $150 maybe. And I recently was contacted by a company that I reviewed, I think, their battery tester, and I flat rejected their scan tool because it was $250 and couldn't do all the stuff that I would think would make it a really good scan tool. So I'm still on the look. In the meantime, the Blue Drivers is a good contender, and the Carista, but the Carista does not do live data. The Blue Driver does. All righty, let's continue. So Sammy says, I have a 93 Corolla Previa, Toyota Previa, I'm sorry, 168,000 miles. How do I check my OBD? So a 93 is going to be an OBD1. You need what we refer to at the dealership as the brick. It's just an old diagnostic tester that plugs into the OBD2, OBD1 connector. However, on these old OBD1, there's a procedure to read codes. If you need to check codes, there's a jumper, there's a terminal that is like the test terminal under the hood. You have to find it, put a specific jumper, and then you'll get a flashing check engine light. The codes will be a 2-digit codes. So it'll flash 1, then stop, then flash 3 times as code 13. That's how you read codes on these old ones. The codes were very ancient, and most of the time nobody really used any kind of diagnosis on them. They were very simple. They didn't have a lot of check engine light related issues. There was things that were very basic in OBD1 days. But the best way, I would encounter in a scan tool, just get your codes and find what the code means. So Yusuf says, thank you so much, sir, for watching. I appreciate it. Neil, welcome from the Philippines. Thank you for watching, sir. So Tito Hernandez says, what have you heard about the new Tundra and the engine they plan on using? What are your thoughts? So, folks, I just want to say this. I don't work directly for Toyota. I work for a dealership, which is a franchise of Toyota. Toyota's been very secretive, and I do have some contacts in the Toyota land, of course, working with them for over a decade. They are extremely secretive about all their workings. They don't really share much information, and most of the time we find out stuff like about the Tundra. I found out stuff from spy pictures before we even know anything. However, the current conclusion that we have come up to, just this is not confirmed by any way, shape, or form, is that the new Tundra potentially will have a twin turbo V6, potentially from the LS 500. And potentially there will be a hybrid variant similar to the LS 600, where it will not be a complete hybrid with an ECVT. It could be a hybrid assist. Again, we'll have to wait and find out. As of this moment, I don't have anything official on the Tundra other than it is confirmed and it has to be completely different, redesigned from the ground up. The spy pictures you've seen, it would have rear coil springs, no more leaf springs, which is one of the things that people don't like about the Tundras, is how they drive. It could be a little bit of a rough driving truck compared to other competitors, but that would be one welcome change if it really stuck with the coil springs in the back. So Kalu says, after how many miles should we change the PCV valves? Folk, the PCV valve is not a maintenance item per se, but I'd say a good time to replace it would be when you replace your spark plugs, whether you have a 60,000 mile spark plug, 30,000 mile spark plug, or 120. 30,000 miles might be a bit too early. 60,000 is better. Anywhere from 60,000 to 120, I think you're playing it safe there. That would be a good time to replace your PCV valve. So John says, thank you for your super chat, sir. About your comment on transmission filter and fuel filter, no need to change them, but won't they get clogged over time? So this is a very good question, actually, and let me address it in detail. So the transmission filter, yes, there is a transmission filter. It is actually an element filter, not just a screen. On some of the older ones, it was just a strainer. It was not really a filter. But on the newer ones, yes, there is a filter. However, I have not yet seen one clogged, dirty, causing issues with 200,000, 300,000, 400,000 mile cars that we've seen. As long as the fluid is replaced on time, you should not worry about that transmission fluid. And actually, there's a theory going out right now, which I am thinking about making a video about it. There is more risk for you to take the transmission pan down for contamination just to replace that filter than for you to leave it and just replace the fluid on time. That's one thing. The other thing is the fuel filter. Well, there has been a theory going on that fuel filters actually cause clogging more than they help. And you notice a lot of cars got away with them because the small filter, it's not even, I wouldn't even call it a filter. It's just a strainer to keep any large particles from going inside the fuel pump. That's what you have in the fuel tank. Toyotas that are 15 years old that never had a filter, they don't have really issues. They still are on the original fuel pump and there's no issues. So Toyota figured, well, we're not going to waste our time with putting a fuel filter and adding more maintenance to the owner. So I honestly would not replace either. If you're not introducing contaminants to the fuel tank, and by just regularly filling it and not using, containers that are dirty or just filling it from the gas station, you should have no issues. And the other one is replace your transmission fluid on time. That is the key thing here. Every 60,000 miles, 6 years on non-hybrid models, and you should really have no problem. And by the way, Toyota hybrids on the ECVT, they do not have a transmission filter. There is no filter at all, unlike the regular automatics. All righty, let's see the next question. So Mo says, is it safe to power wash an engine and any concern rust proofing and sensors? So power washing an engine, I typically don't like power washing an engine because you're not really, if you use just a regular hose with a little bit of pressure, that'll be really do it because it's an engine. It's not like an interior of a car. But make sure you don't direct high pressure water at connectors. Yes, all the electrical connectors are weatherproof, if you would, but they're not 3,000 PSI high pressure waterproof. Let's put it this way. They're splash proof. So if you splash water on them, they're okay. But my best recommendation always is dry them out, especially connectors are facing up. So you spray them with water. Now that water is sitting there. It could be sitting there for a long time. You want to dry it up, blow it with compressed air and dry it up. That way you won't have any potential water getting into the connectors. And rust proofing, don't worry about rust proofing. I've been hearing a lot of emails, comments from viewers about rust proofing hybrids in general. And there is no issue with rust proofing hybrids. I don't know where some dealerships are getting this idea. The high voltage cable underneath the car, it's designed to withstand the outside elements. You're going to put the rust coating, even if it goes on top of it. It's not really going to do much. This is a highly insulated cable. If it has air, like a way for water to get in, you're going to have all kinds of problems with the car before that becomes an issue, because these things are always tested every time you start the car. If there's any power leakage, you're going to see it. So, okay on pressure washer, although I'd rather you use just regular water pressure and some brush and brush everything down and then hose it down again and dry it. But rust proofing is also good, even on hybrids. I don't see a problem. Why not? So, Kid DC, thank you for your super chat, sir. 2012 Camry relearned procedure. My idle is low after replacing the battery. Already cleaned throttle body. Any ideas? I'll go back to the throttle body. Make sure you clean it well. There is no relearn procedure. Basically, when you disconnect the battery, especially on those were the later ones actually got better at this, but this one, it goes back to base operation where the car is new. It doesn't compensate for any dirt on the throttle body. So you want to go back and clean that throttle body better, because that's really the only thing. The relearn, there's no manual way to do that relearn. You have to drive it for up to a week and it'll relearn on its own. That's if you don't clean the throttle body. But if you clean the throttle body after a battery replacement and it's still not idling right, you're going to want to go back and clean it better, if you would, especially both sides. When you open the throttle body, most people just clean the one side. You got to go on the other side, which is a little harder because you got to hold the throttle plate open and clean behind it. You want to clean, and this is what people focus on cleaning and forget the most important part. And this is on me as well. I should make a video about this, and I will soon. When you open the throttle plate, you want to clean the bore, not the plate itself. And that's what I see a lot of people like, clean the throttle body, but you didn't clean the bore. The bore is what matters, where the plate sits on the bore. If you open the plate, just slowly open it with your hand, and you see a line of black debris right where the plate closes. That's where you want to clean, and you want to make it completely shiny on both sides. All that black stuff needs to go where that line is. That's what constitutes good throttle body cleaning. All right. So Manresh said, hi there, I bought a 2020 Forerunner, but disappointed by the power. It does not zoom. Well, the Forerunner is ancient. If you've seen the series that was started today, Forerunner is ancient. It's not the fastest truck in the world. It has adequate power, but it's not fast. Unfortunately, that's just the part of the ancient factor of it. Makes right around, I think, 260, 270 horsepower, somewhere around that neighborhood. Not a lot of torque. And the main reason for that is they went with reliability over performance. Again, that's the regular formula that Toyota always uses. Unfortunately, there's probably a supercharger kit, but I don't recommend it because the reliability will just go down. The more power you push out of an engine, the less reliable it is. That's just the way the cookie crumbles with engine reliability. So Bartos says, if I would reset the transmission adaptations myself on my 2018 Camry, would that be able to tell and void the warranty? Would Toyota be able to tell? They will not. There is no way for them to tell. However, when you use the word adaptation, that is more of a German car language, if you would. On Toyota, there is a memory reset on the transmission, not disconnecting the battery, not resetting the check engine light or erasing codes. That wouldn't really do much. But resetting the transmission memory itself is done through TechStream. It's a very simple process. There's not really a way that I know of, that I've seen, that they would be able to tell, and that should not void your warranty. However, after you do that memory reset, you need to drive the car for 20 minutes at normal speeds, normal driving, 35 miles an hour, for all the pressures to set and the initial learning to finish. Otherwise, you're going to have some weird shifts and some delays, and you'd have to redo that process again. Usually when a technician does that, they're supposed to do that, but not everybody reads that you're supposed to do that. So some of them will miss it. So Tony says, for the 2021 Sienna, does all the USB electric plugs draw power from the 12-volt battery or hybrid motor battery? So Tony, when the hybrid system, and if somebody has asked me about this very recently, when the car is on, when a hybrid, and this applies to all hybrids, not just the 2021 Sienna, when you see the ready light on the dash, the car is on. Whether the engine is running or not, that's irrelevant, but the car is on. That means the hybrid system is enabled. That means your DC-DC converter is running. It is the alternator. There's no alternator on the engine. The DC-DC converter is the alternator. So that's what's charging the battery and supplying all the power. So as long as you see that ready light on the dash, you're not using your 12-volt battery. You're actually, the hybrid system is on. That's what's supplying power. But if the ready light is off and you have the key on, all the lights will be on and the car will behave as if it is on, but it is not. And at that point, you are using your 12-volt battery. So Canon Gavin, I'm sorry with the names, I'm trying to read them. Was the PCV valve moved on the 2018 V6 Camry? Yes. And we've been recently looking at this, and I believe it became part of the valve cover because they don't want you to maintain it anymore. We're trying to figure out if there's a service kit for it, if you can actually replace it without replacing the whole valve cover, which is kind of ridiculous. But yes, it was moved, and it is no longer a serviceable one like the old one. And potentially they integrated in the valve cover because it's a plastic valve cover, and replacing a valve on it is a recipe for disaster. So yes, as of now, it might be that you need to replace the valve cover to replace the PCV valve, which is not a very good move. Let's put it this way. So J Bond says, what do you think about the 2021 Toyota Highlander Limited? I think they're fantastic cars. The Highlander, the new generation Highlander, have had a very smooth launch, if you would. That's the word I'm looking for. So usually when I say smooth launch, and some people might not picture this terminology that I sometimes use, and I apologize for that. When a new car, I work at a dealership, and when the car comes in, Toyota usually wants like master diagnostic technicians or master technicians to do the delivery prep on new cars, on new models. Like in 2020, we're back in late 2019 when the 2020 Highlander new generation came out. They want masters and master diagnostic technicians to do the prep. So if there's any launch problems, meaning if there's production problems, issues, they want the cars checked very thoroughly. So if there's issue, they need to know about it and correct them right away. So cars like the 16 Tacoma, they were a complete disaster when they launched. There were so many problems when they were brand new. So that was a rough start to a car. Of course, doesn't mean it's a bad car. It's a bad truck. It's a good truck, but it had problems when it was new. But the 2020 Highlander, they were really smooth when they launched. We didn't have a lot of problems. Yes, there was odds and ends, small stuff, but the 2021 should be even better. And it is really a nice car. I would actually look at the hybrid variant of those, as they get really good gas mileage compared to the previous generation with the V6, since they went to the 4-cylinder. But I think it's a good car. If you're looking at buying one, go test drive it, check it out. If you like it, it's a good buy. So John, thank you for your super chat, sir. On my 2016 RAV4 all-wheel drive, any need to replace or service the radiator cap, thermostat, mass airflow, Iac valve, vent valve on the transfer case rear differential? So let's start with the first one. Radiator cap. On that RAV4, the radiator cap is not actually a cap. It's a plastic cap on the bottle on the side. If it's not broken, don't fix it. that applies 100%. And folks, if you hear the noise in my video, I apologize. All my neighbors are cutting their lawn. And 5 minutes ago, before we started the live stream, well, more than 5 minutes, time flies here. But 5 minutes before I started live stream, they were all quiet. As soon as I start, they all start. So apologies for that. But going back to the radiator cap, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. If you have no problem with the radiator cap, no overheating, no coolant spilling, no problems of that sort, don't worry about it. I wouldn't waste my money. Thermostat, same thing. If you replace your coolant on time, thermostat should not fail unless you have a concern. And most OBD2 cars, especially yours is a later OBD2 car, if you have a problem with the thermostat, you're going to get a code that'll tell you the thermostat is not holding the temperature as where it needs to be, meaning it's opening early. And the mass airflow, you can clean it, but the computer has the ability to compensate for it, really, to even to the worst case. And when it can't do that anymore, it'll throw a code. So you can clean it. There's no problem. Iac valve, there's no Iac valve on your car, sir. It has electric throttle, and I will continue my series on how Toyota engine controls work, where we'll dig into how the throttle by wire on Toyota works. There's no Iac valve. It just opens the throttle plate, and that's how it controls the idle. So that's one component you don't have to worry about. The vent valves and the transfer case and rear differential wouldn't be a bad idea to check them. The transfer case will be a little difficult to get to, but the rear differential shouldn't be too hard to get to. Just make sure they spin, and that's about all I'm doing for that one. If they spin, we're good. If not, you're likely going to get leaks, so maybe free it up, make sure it's moving freely. So let's find the next question. So Swindy says, what do you think of the 2022 Tundra? So we spoke about it in the live stream a little bit back. We're gonna have to wait and see, honestly. V6 turbo, I don't know how I like turbos. With turbo cars, it's not about if, it's about when things go south with the turbo. But unfortunately, that's the world we live in, and things will get all turboed up. There was a time, we'll come back to 1987, when the Toyota Supra had a turbo, and that was not a great idea. That was possibly the later end of the turbo life for Toyota. Yes, they did come back on the Lexus side, but I don't know. We're going to find out what engine they decide to put. If they decide to put the one from the Lexus, LS500, it's going to be a scary one, because if you've seen a Lexus LS500, which I have, you open the hood, you remove the beauty covers, and it doesn't look like a Toyota engine. It looks like some German car, but we'll find out when it comes out. Thurl says, can you review the 2021 Toyota Highlander? Yes, that is actually, I want to get one after the Sienna. So you will see that soon on the channel. So Jason says, any issues with 18 Camry long-term? I don't see any long-term issues with good maintenance. The transmission is clunky. The 8-speed transmission, we can go on and on about the 8-speed transmission, but it's clunky. It's not the smoothest. It's not a 6-speed transmission, that's for sure. But as far as issues, they've been doing okay so far. Yes, the transmission issues continue, honestly, but overall, the cars are holding well. I actually just worked on one yesterday. It was an 18. It was not a hybrid, and it was a cab, and had 180,000 miles. Runs perfect, and that's testimony. So we're starting to see some high mile ones that are really problem free for the most part. They do have their little things, but nothing major where I tell you trade it in, let's get out of here. Yeah. So L says, the 2019 Forerunner has fuel motor recall for replacement. Should I do it soon or waiting? So the fuel pump recall, Al, I would get it done, because that's actually a serious issue if you leave it as it is. The fuel pump could fail prematurely, by the way. It's just a supply problem. It's not a problem that is chronic with the truck or any other model that is affected. It's just a problem with the truck, with the part itself. Not the design, it's just the supplier. They messed up, and Toyota's taking care of it, of course, as usual. So get it in, get it taken care of. You'll never have a problem or hear about it with the fuel pump as life has been before. And after that, life is good, and you won't have to worry about it. So Russ, thank you for your super chat, sir. 2.4 Scion XB, rough idle when cooling fan and or AC compressor comes on, nearly stalls, mass airflow clean, throttle body clean, spark plug change, injector clean, ideas. Motor mounts. Now, you do mention your idle comes down. There's a difference between a shaky idle and a low idle. If we have a low idle, that's a problem. That means either you need to reset the memory by this one. I think you can disconnect. I'm guessing this is an 08 to 15. Those are the only ones with the 2.4. You can disconnect the battery, clean the throttle body well. I talked about the throttle body a little bit. I'm not going to make it long for others, but clean it well. The bore, that's what needs to be cleaned. And moving on after that to the, what do you call them? The motor mounts. Something common with these, and unfortunately you can replace one, you can replace two, just replace the 4 and call it a day. That's the way these things are, and they do shake. And another more important thing, actually, before you do anything, does this car burn oil? These were notorious for oil burning, and if you have enough of the oil burning problem, you could have a rough idle because of simple low compression at idle. That's another thing I would maybe perhaps check your compression. And if you burn oil already, then you know that's an issue. So Craig says, thank you for your super chat, sir. Very concerned on liquid falling into hybrid battery under the seat. Any cover or tarp we can add between the battery and the seat? See, the problem, Craig, is, yes, I like your idea and I see where you're going with this, but the problem is you wrap the battery. Now there's a lot of vents and purposefully built air circulation openness, if you will. That's why you can really get water in there. If you put a tarp on top of it, you could potentially choke that battery out. So if you're going to put a tarp, I would put the tarp on the seat, on top of the seat, not underneath it on the battery. Yes, that might not be the most convenient option. However, it is better than potentially damaging the battery from overheating. If you're going to put a tarp, put it on top of the seat where it closes the seat up so the water cannot get between the seat back and the bottom. That's the only way I would do it. Otherwise, don't try to put it directly over the battery because you could cause overheating problems. Okay. Shane, you made it, man. Welcome. Late but here. Hey, late's better than never. So Steve says, which is more reliable, Lexus RX 330 or RX 350? So we're talking about two engines here. Steve, the 330 has a 3.33 MZFE engine. Beautiful engine, timing belt engine. They're really reliable and robust. And the 350 has a 3.52 GRFE. So they're not the same engine. One has a timing belt, one has a timing chain. Maintenance costs initially on the 350 will be less. On the 330, you have to replace a timing belt. They're kind of notorious for some oil leaks, but the 350, as they get older, they will also have oil leaks. And there's a trade-off because the water pump is notorious to go on the 350. Front timing cover is somewhat common on these, and they can get a little up there in price because the engine has to come out for anything oil leak related on that engine. But honestly, I wouldn't put one ahead of the other. The RX 330s are getting a little older, so you're going to want to be careful if you're buying one, because a lot of people just, oh, I bought a Toyota, I'm just going to drive it till the wheels fall off, but they forget about the maintenance part. The RX 350s, you're going to find newer with lower miles. So they're both good options if you can find one that is clean, that is maintained, that is taken care of. The 350 will have more power than the 330. The 330 was kind of slow, but neither of them is a race car. So test drive both, see which engine you like better. Make sure you check for oil leaks. Make sure you, on the 330, check for a timing belt record, because that's also a big expense to replace that. MC, thank you for your super chat, sir. No Scoth, thank you for your super chat. 2012 Scion TC. I parked the car overnight with no problems. This morning when I started the car, my ABS light and traction light came on, but no check engine light though. What could that be? So you probably have an ABS code, and the most common codes, and of course, I cannot with good honesty tell you, oh, this is exactly what you have. You have to pull codes, and the ABS system has individual codes than the OBD2 or what causes the check engine light to come on. So you're going to want to get codes. You might need a scan tool for this one that is more than your average code reader. But the most common things with ABS is as simple as speed sensors. It happens, two things with speed sensors. So the speed sensor, there's 4 speed sensors, one at each wheel. There is the wire from the speed sensor to the computer. That wire, if it gets broken or intermittently cause a weird signal the computer doesn't like, it will set these codes. The speed sensor itself could be bad. Those are the most common things, but honestly, I wouldn't spend a penny replacing anything until you get the codes, because otherwise you wouldn't know. If you drive this car for a week and the light all of a sudden just goes off and never comes back, you might have an intermittent issue with one of the sensors. That's another common one. But as far as safety, or ABS doesn't work at the moment, which if you're not driving in rain, snow, or bad conditions like that, it's not a big issue. No rush on this one, but do at least get it scanned to see what's going on with the codes and go from there. All right. So Carlos, what do you think about the new Camry transmission? The 8-speed is interesting. So I personally don't mind the 8-speed. It's clunky, yes, but after some time of driving, it'll adapt and it'll get better. I remember the same feeling on the 2012. I used to own a 2012 Camry and got totaled in an accident, but I remember this people complain about the 6-speed shifting too much and not being smooth and all that when it first came out. And now we're complaining the same thing about the 8-speed. All valid complaints, by the way, but that's reliability-wise, I think they will be reliable. They had some issues in the beginning, a lot of issues actually, but going forward, they're clunky the way they shift, but that's not a problem that's going to cause failure. It's just the way it is. So I don't think they're going to be a problem. I wouldn't think Toyota would just put their 8-speed in every single model they own when it's a bad transmission. So Challenger says, I have what sounds like a vacuum leak under the dash of my 15 Sequoia, likely a heater-controlled diaphragm. So I'm trying to think. There is not really much vacuum really under the dash on Sequoia, 15 Sequoia. A vacuum leak sound. The only thing I can think of is a booster. I mean, that's really uncommon. Does it happen when you press the brake? Does it change? You want to establish a pattern. When does it happen? Does it happen all the time as soon as the engine is running, or when you're driving? That's the things that I will be looking at. But as far as vacuum hoses behind the dash, I don't think there's anything that is vacuum operated behind the dash, and I'm pretty sure of that because everything on the AC control is motors. There's not really diaphragms, vacuum like the olden days, but I would start to localizing exactly where it's coming from, because that one is an interesting one even for me. I haven't really seen any issues with these. Hold on. Why does YouTube do that? So every once in a while, I'm going through the comments. I try to go things in order, and it just flips the page. Now I don't know where we're at. Appreciate your patience, guys. Here we are. So Craig says, any issues with the new TNGA architecture for a Highlander hybrid 2020-21? Any issues in general, both with the architecture and hybrid system? Usually first years manifest problems. Honestly, with the Highlanders, we haven't really had many issues, anything significant, especially with the TNGA. They're pretty similar, and you can see the similarities between them. And I wanted to do a video earlier, but it got pushed back a little bit. I want to show you what is similar. I'll get 2 TNGA cars that are completely different. Maybe, I don't know, a Corolla and a Highlander or a Sienna. Not really, you wouldn't think much is common between them, but there's so much common. You wouldn't believe how they got this TNGA working. It's pretty impressive. Makes cars very low to the ground, makes them handle very well, but there hasn't been really issues. How would I say this? There hasn't been issues localized to the TNGA. Oh, this is a TNGA problem. No, most of the issues have been just production, small stuff, but nothing really major with these. And the hybrid drivetrain in these is really good. I really like the new hybrid drivetrain. They got away from the 6-cylinder, which really didn't make sense because it didn't get very impressive gas mileage and the price was too high. But with the new 4-cylinder, it's a lot better than gas mileage. So Gilbert, thank you so much for your super chat, sir. Went from a Ford Edge to a 19 Forerunner, 44K miles. It shifts clunky compared to the Edge. I'm fine. I just want to make sure it's normal. Yes, it's normal. And the reason for that, I just started a series today on the Forerunner. If you haven't seen it, Gilbert, the Forerunner is ancient. It's literally horse and buggy style ancient when you compare it to the newer stuff, and even your Ford Edge. It's no comparison. First is the body on frame. The Ford Edge is a unibody. It's going to be a lot smoother. It's more like car-like. The Forerunner is a flat truck. Everything is clunky. Everything is just manual feeling and very rugged feeling. And that's completely normal. You have nothing to worry about. I just hope it doesn't bother you, because you really, really have a good truck that 15 years from now, when the thing still runs exactly the way it runs right now, you will remember this moment that I'm telling you this. You will not regret this truck. Just take care of it and it will take care of you. Kyron, thank you so much for your super chat. What are your thoughts on putting a Magnuson Supercharger on a 2018 Forerunner? Would it cause any problems with future reliability? Folks, any modification to any car aimed at increasing power will affect your reliability. The end of that story. But the real question is, how much? And how much are you willing to put up with? People usually modify their throw that supercharger on. Life is good, and I'm not knocking down the company. The company actually, this one makes a really good product, but you need to follow it up with better maintenance, better gas, better, overall taking care of the truck more, because now you're pushing it past its limit. Something's got to give. And if you're going to drive it hard daily, things will fall apart rapidly, because now you're demanding more of this engine than it's designed to do. But if you're going to put one, oil change is the first thing. You're going to want to do better oil changes. You're going to want to consider better spark plugs, perhaps, because now you're pushing things past their limit, and you're going to want to kind of cover your bases, especially your brakes. If this truck all of a sudden makes 50, 80 more horsepower, well, you're going to burn up these brakes much quicker, because now you're flooring it, you're flying, and now you're slamming on your brakes. There's a lot of considerations when you modify a car, more than just the initial price of putting the supercharger. So if power is an utmost importance to you, you will sacrifice some reliability. But if you're just doing it because it would be nice to have more power, is it nicer than reliability? That's what the question I will be asking, because yes, reliability will be affected, but by how much is the question. Pedro, thank you so much for your super chat. Is the French-built Yaris as reliable as the ones built in Japan? Honestly, in the US, I have not seen the French-built ones, because now we have the Mazda 2. That's the Yaris in the US. But knowing Toyota, and this has been the debate of the centuries, are Japanese-made Toyotas better than American, French, Turkish, Mexican, whatever the case country may be? Personally, from what I see, working on these things every single day, I see the North American ones, see the Turkish CHR, I see the Mexican Tacomas, I see the Canadian RAV4s, and many other models in between. Honestly, they're all the same. That's just God honest truth. Case in point, and people will argue this tooth and nail, case in point, Japanese cars are made perfectly, right? The ones in Japan. Well, the fuel pump, the fuel tank issue on the RAV4 hybrids that made people countless buybacks because of this, because of the delay to get the fix, they were affecting the Japanese models first. Then they started affecting the North American made ones. So that's when it becomes kind of like, I don't know. They're all built to the same specification. Yes, the suppliers might be different, but there has been issues localized to the Japanese made ones, just like there has been issues localized to made elsewhere. So the question here is, you're buying a Toyota. Toyota will not put their name on an inferior product made in one of their factories across the world and not do anything about it. They will immediately fix things. Yes, there has been issues related to factories, but they are very good at fixing them very quickly. And that's why I always tell people, don't buy the first year model, or at least don't buy the first batch of the new model, because Toyota fixes things very rapidly. No Scott, thank you for another super chat, sir. 2ARFE engine. I have 125K with no leaks or problems. Is high mileage motor oil needed, or just stay with what I'm using? Honestly, brother, I'll tell you this. You made it to 125K and you have zero issues. You're doing something right. Continue doing it. High mileage oils, and this comes from, I'm not going to disclose the source, but it comes from an oil company that sells motor oil. Most of the oils that say high mileage, they're exactly the same as the ones that say no high mileage. Honestly, I've driven cars that have 200,000-300,000 miles personally, and I always put the same oil from day one to 300,000 miles, and I never had a single issue. Don't spend more money on oil. Spend more money on changing your oil more often with normal oil, not the most expensive premium racing oil, and not the cheapest one that you don't even know who made it. Normal brand. I read here you're using Pennzoil. Pennzoil is a good known brand. Continue to use it, full synthetic, and forget about that high mileage stuff, because with Toyota, 125 is not high mileage. So music, and I'm trying to read that name. You know who you are. Thank you for your super chat. Would a first gen 07 Highlander driver's seat, wire, and connectors be compatible with 2012 connectors and airbag system? Right off the bat, I can't tell you yes or no, but my best guess would be no, because those are completely two different generations from completely two different times. The airbag requirements on both of these years were completely different, and I wouldn't say they're plug and play. There will be some modifications, and when it comes to modifications in airbag, I just call the veto card and tell you it's not worth it. Whatever modification you're trying to do, your life is worth more. Airbags are dangerous. I wouldn't do modifications, but they definitely don't bolt in right off, and the connectors will be different, but more importantly, the system where the airbag works will be completely different. Craig, thank you for your super chat, sir. 2013 Toyota Sequoia 5.7 seems like driving with the tow button turned on really increases the throttle and acceleration. Will it hurt anything to turn it on for normal driving and not towing besides using more fuel? It will not hurt anything, because Toyota will not put something that you could harm the car with that accessible. But what the tow button does, it will increase throttle response a little bit. But mostly of what it does, it will hold gears longer. So now instead of the truck just shifting at 1,500 RPM to the next gear when you're normal accelerating, it'll hold it to 2,000, 2,500, just to give you that braking when you're towing something behind you. Is that going to hurt anything? Depends how you drive the truck. If you're pedal to the metal all the time, yes, potentially. But if you're just driving normally, I don't think it's going to hurt anything. Make sure, though, you consider replacing the transmission fluid every 60,000 on those trucks, and you should have no issues. Okay. So let's see the next question. So question here, are the 2ARFE engines known for oil burning? If you come and sit next to me in the shop where I work in for the last decade or more, you will see the truth about the 2ARFE. Fantastic engine. I've owned the 2ARFE, and I've taken apart, rebuilt hundreds, possibly thousands. They do burn oil, but they don't burn oil because they're badly designed. They do burn oil when people decide, oh, we're going to go for the 10,000-mile oil change and change the oil once every 3 years. Then people do that. People will do that, unfortunately. These engines are very, very sensitive to oil burning, and they will clog those piston rings so fast and start burning worse than the previous 2.4. But the reason why Toyota has not really said, oh, you know what, like the previous 2AZ within the 07 to 09 Camry and other models, the reason they didn't say, oh, we have a problem, we got to fix it, because that's how Toyota is, because people were causing this, not a design problem. In the previous engine that burned oil, I don't care how you took care of that engine. It will burn oil because it has a design problem. The 2ARFE, and even worse than the 2ARFE, the 1ARFE, the 2.7, it was worse. It was the worst for oil consumption. When you just go those 10,000-mile oil changes without considering or reading the owner's manual, it tells you if you drive short trips, you got to change it every 5. And people didn't do that, and they changed it every 10. And the things start burning oil like you would not believe. I'm talking 2-3 quarts in 500 miles gone. And the notorious thing for these is you make a turn, the car shuts off because there's so little oil left in it. When you turn to the side, the variable valve timing runs out of oil and it just kills the car. That was the common thing. We see this all the time, especially now in this time. 2009, 2011, Camry, 2009, 2012, RAV4s, notorious for this. And it's all because of bad maintenance habits, not because the engine has a design problem. So Jalal says, I have a 2018 Forerunner Limited. Me and you are good friends. We're already starting on good foot. You have a good car. Is it worth, in your opinion, to exchange for a 2021 Forerunner Limited? Absolutely not. The only difference between the 2018 and the 2021 Forerunner is the dynamic cruise control, which, by the way, it is clunky, it is not great, it is a complete add-on last minute just to make the truck kind of catch up with some of the modern stuff, which most of the time you're going to end up not using. And now you're out all this cash for trading a truck that is exactly the same. There's absolutely nothing that have changed between 18 and 21. The only thing that I would say might be worth it is the LED headlights. But again, you can buy some aftermarket LED headlights and save yourself a lot of money and keep this truck that you've had for 3 years now without any issues, because otherwise they're exactly the same. I wouldn't really consider that exchange, honestly. So Carlos says, what do you think about the new CVT transmission for the Camry 18 2020? So the 18 to 20 Camry did not have a CVT. It has an 8-speed transmission. On the hybrid one, it has an eCVT, which is solid, which is really reliable. Folks, if you're shopping for a Camry hybrid, 2018 and up, possibly one of the best ones they made ever. Every generation of Toyota hybrids they came up with were like, wow, this is really good. I remember when the 12 Camry came out, I'm like, wow, this is like as good as they get, better acceleration, better this, better that. And then the 18 came up, I'm like, yeah, it's even better. So 18 and up, if you're looking for a hybrid, you're not even going to know there is an eCVT because they're so reliable. You're not really going to have any issues with them. So Crow Perez says, can I partial change the transmission oil in 2007 Sienna with 160,000 miles with world standard? When you say partial change, I'm trying to understand what you mean, but if you mean drain and fill, that is perfectly fine. However, if this is a little bit of an older Sienna with some miles, if the transmission fluid has never been changed, I would leave it alone because that's a little too old and a lot of miles. If you have a record it being changed at least once before, hopefully twice, but at least once, go ahead and replace it. You won't have any issues. Just do a drain and fill. Don't do a flush at this mileage. Folks, flush works if you do it on time from day one. But if you're higher in miles, I wouldn't do a flush. Do a drain and fill. It's safer. It's better. Life is good. Robert says, are Toyota Tundras very DIY vehicles, or are the Tacomas more DIY? See, DIY term is a relative term here, Robert. DIY as in oil change, brakes, regular small maintenance. They're both equally DIY. But now we get into oil leaks and water pump and stuff like that. They're both equal. Trucks are difficult to work on because how high they are. If you're a short guy like me, it's going to be hard to reach over and work on them. But are they both DIY? They are very DIY because they're ancient. There's no direct injection. There's no complication of emission stuff. Everything is simple and old school. So they are DIY, but trucks in general, they're less friendly to work on because they're just higher, awkward position in the engine, sitting down. That's just the way they are. All right. Let's move on to the next question. So Cargador says, is the Toyota Sienna a good hybrid van than the gas? Thanks. So folks, the 2021 Sienna Hybrid is the first Sienna Hybrid and the only model available. There's actually no gas model in the 2021 Hybrid. There's only the hybrid model. They're really good. They're low on power, really good fan, really good gas mileage, and that used to be the worst thing with the old gas model. The gas mileage was horrible, but with the new one, the gas mileage is much better, and I don't think you can go wrong with buying one if you don't mind the slight drop in power levels. Robert's random stuff says, do you know if they will come out with a new FJ? I think Toyota made the biggest mistake getting rid of the FJ. And by the way, in case people don't know this, they almost canceled the Forerunner. I was just talking about this today. They almost canceled the Forerunner. There was a time back when the dinosaurs walked when the Forerunner sales dropped rapidly and people were not buying them. They were not interested. And later on, right before they pulled the plug, everybody started buying them. And saying, unfortunately, that did happen to the FJ. If the FJ was still made today, they would sell like hotcakes, more than the Forerunner. But they canceled it, and unfortunately, I do not know of any word to bring them back at this moment. Jorge says, thank you for your super chat, sir. Is there a way to ECU tune a 4-cylinder Camry 18 to make more power? Honestly, I am not the person to ask for that, because I'm the person to tell you your warranty is voided because you tuned an ECU on a car. But I just saw a company that it might have been a V6 Camry. They do tune them. Any car can be tuned. But the question I want to ask you is, why are you taking a risk in modifying a car to get a little bit more power, sacrificing the most important reason why you bought it, which is reliability? Now, I understand, to each their own, and I'm perfectly fine with you, but I'll give you another solution. Why don't you consider trading that car in and get a V6? You'll get a lot more power, still good gas mileage, a lot more, still very reliable car with a lot more power, and there you go. That's a much better solution than trying to tune and now potentially pushing the car past its limits, and now you could have issues. Tommy Cash, thank you for your super chat. If Toyotas are so great, why does the warranty suck? Okay, we'll get to that. Kia, Hyundai, Mitsubishi, and others have 10-year, 100,000-mile warranty. Tommy Cash, before I open my mouth and get myself in hot waters and trouble, I will start saying one thing. I sincerely apologize for what I'm about to say. I am potentially not the person to ask for Kia and Hyundai, because every time those two words come in mind, all I can remember is a 1997 Kia Cephia that I floored it and the engine blew up. Flat out. This was a nice car, well maintained, la la la. It just flat blew up. It was that's. I know they have come a long way from that, but Kia and Hyundai sells you cars because we know it's basically what they're trying to tell you with that 10-year, 100,000-mile warranty is. We know it's a disaster, but at least you're covered when it does break down. That's how I look at that. Folks, we're not talking in the same world of reliability here. Mitsubishi has fallen off the face of the planet when they started making cars like the Mirage and some other hideous models. They kept their cars ancient in a bad way. The Forerunner is ancient because it's a good truck that they just kept making over and over. Mitsubishi took that to a different level. Oh, let's take a horrible car and let's continue to make the same thing over and over. Unfortunately, Mitsubishi makes great products other than cars. Cars fell off. They canceled their only Halo car, the Evolution, and everything went downhill from there. Kia and Hyundai, they offer a 10-year, 100,000-mile warranty, but did you know that that's only for the first owner, which makes their resale value tank? Because now the second owner has no warranty. Their warranty drops just like a Toyota. And then in the 5 years, 60,000-mile powertrain warranty that Toyota has, if you're ever going to have issues, they usually fall within that. And then you're going to drive this car for another 10 years without a single issue. So I don't know about the 10-year, 100,000-mile warranty being a big factor in you buying a Toyota. And here's one for you. You can buy Toyotas are so reliable. Their extended warranties are super cheap compared to others. You can extend that warranty easily to 100,000 miles for not almost a very small cost. And if you buy a certified Toyota, it does have 7 years, 100,000-mile powertrain warranty. So there is avenues to get to that. I personally, and this is welcome to the internet, I will make this statement. I will never buy a Kia or a Hyundai in my life. That's just my personal opinion. I don't like how they are. I don't like their cars. I don't like their design philosophy. I'm a Toyota man, yes, and I do like other manufacturers. I own a few Mercedes-Benz. They're horrible cars, but I love them. It's just kind of like that troubled child that you love. Still your child. You love them, but they're trouble. Kia and Hyundai, they're just not my thing. And I will end this right here because I could go on and on how much I dislike their products. But that's my personal opinion. That doesn't mean that they're horrible. But on the warranty, you should not buy a car because of the warranty. You should buy a car because of the company that is behind them. And if the only reason they're selling cars a lot is their warranty, that would be a concern to me, honestly. So let's go to the next question. So Omar says, is a mass airflow sensor a maintenance item that should be replaced every so many miles or only after it starts failing because of a check engine light? So the mass airflow is not a maintenance item. It is, even cleaning it is not a maintenance thing because the computer has the ability to compensate when it does get dirty, and it knows that. So they should not be replaced at a certain miles. You will very commonly see 300,000-400,000 mile Toyotas with the original mass airflow. However, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. This is what makes a Toyota is don't over maintain them. Maintain them right, but don't overkill it, because then you're spending so much money maintaining, replacing this, replacing that. What's the point of buying a reliable car to begin with? You see where I'm going with this? Don't replace the mass airflow unless you have problems with it. And the chances are you're not going to have a problem with it for a very long time. All right, folks. Let's continue. So randomly says, I need to know how the low engine oil viscosity in the hybrid cars will perform in high weather temperature countries. So I've been asked this question a lot, and higher temperatures, you could use a little thicker oil, but follow the manufacturer's specification. Like cars with 0W16 that are sold in your country, that is a hot climate country, and they still tell you use the 0W16, use that oil. But follow the manufacturer. Don't follow that little corner mechanic that tells you, oh, you got to put 20W50 in your hybrid car because, you know, we're in a hot country. Toyota doesn't know where we live. No, yes, they do. Read your owner's manual. They'll tell you a temperature chart. Sometimes a little bit complicated to read, I'll admit that, but follow the recommendation. They'll tell you, if you have these temperatures, this is the oil you need to use. If you have these temperatures, this is the oil to use. But the best part is they'll tell you this is the preferred oil for fuel economy, for many reasons. For during their testing, Toyota doesn't just take a car, oh, let's drive it in Toyota City in Japan. Yep, it's good. That's it. They'll test it in multiple regions, and that's why you get these multiple recommendations. Follow the manufacturer is your best bet on getting the right oil, not the corner mechanic who thinks, you know, it worked in 1955 Chevy, it's going to work in a 2020 spaceship hybrid. Follow the manufacturer recommendation. That's my best advice to you. Eric, thank you for your super chat, sir. Have you had any complaints about the QI wireless charging not working in the Prius correctly? It seems to take power away from the phone rather than charging it. We have had a few issues with the QI chargers where they wouldn't work. And there's that green light, and the green light will flash a few times, then it'll come on. If you notice it flashing, there might be an issue with the charger itself. Really, we don't do many repairs on these, just replace the whole thing and that's it. But there hasn't been a localized problem to the Prius. But if you notice problem with it, you're under warranty, take it in, get it replaced. It's just, they're just going to replace the whole charger because we don't really do any repairs inside of them. This is not our department, really. This is just something that got tagged on to cars at this point. But notice that flashing light. When you first turn on the button, you press it, the green light should come on. If the green light flashes a little bit, then comes on, you have a problem. Okay, let's see here. So Victoria says, my certified 2017 Camry clicks loud when applying the brakes, only in reverse. The dealer checked it and said it is normal for Camrys to do that. They said it's safe and didn't do anything on it. Victoria, I apologize in advance, but I will say the same thing the dealership said, but I'll go a little bit further and explain what is the noise and what's going on. Your front brakes, there's pads that apply the brakes, and that's how the car stops. These pads are sitting in a little part that is the holder. That's what holds the pad so that the caliper sits on top and it compresses the pads. That's how the car stops. The pads are not supposed to be tight fit. They have a little bit of movement, so they can move as you compress the brakes, they compress. As you let go of the brakes, they come back. When you shift the car in reverse, you change the direction of travel of the car. So now, instead of the wheel going this way, it's going to start turning the other way. As soon as you make that change, the pad needs to also change direction. So when you press the brake that first time, because of the motion of the rotor pulling this way, your pad will also move up and it'll make that clunk. And if you really pay attention, when you press the brake, when you change direction again going forward and you press the brake, you'll hear the same noise. Potentially less because by gravity, the pads will come back down, but that is completely normal. Annoying, drives, my car does this too, and it drives me insane. But it is completely normal and nothing you need to worry about. There's no safety concern. If anything, if you don't hear that noise one day, perhaps the pads are sticking and now we have a problem. Just thought I'd let you know this, but really don't worry about it. Annoying, yes, it is, but safety concern? Absolutely not. Don't even worry about it. So, No Scott, sir, thank you so much for your super chat. When it comes to fuel, the manual says 87 or higher. I've always put premium because of the extra detergent in it. I want best for my baby. Your thoughts? So, folks, premium gas does not have more detergent. This is the common misconception that premium gas is better because it's cleaner, it's more efficient. It's kind of like I bought the generic dish soap, and then I bought the high-end dish soap that has all these extra additives. It is not that. Premium gas has higher octane. That's the end of that. However, there's one thing you need to be aware of where premium could be a better idea. Some areas will have 10% ethanol in their fuel. For whatever reason, mainly to destroy our cars. Thank you, government. But some places, the premium gas will not have the 10% ethanol. In that case, do use it because it is actually better. 0% ethanol gas is a lot better than 10% ethanol gas, period. That is the end of that discussion there. But if you live in an area where ethanol gas has, premium gas has no ethanol in it, absolutely use it. But if you live in an area where there's 10% ethanol in both regular and premium, you are wasting your money. I'm sorry to say this, but the truth needs to be said as it is. You're wasting your money. 87 will do exactly the same because that's what your car is designed to run on, and it'll run like that for 200,000, 300,000, 400,000 miles without any issues. So Tommy Cash says, thank you for your super chat, sir. Does Toyota have a scheduled date for an all-electric fleet? I hope not, just asking. I hope not too, because I admire the technology on electric cars, but I think our infrastructure is just not there, honestly. I don't like range and anxiety. I don't like Tesla's way of doing things to the automotive business. You know, cars and iPhones are not the same. Let's just put it this way. And Toyota eventually, and they actually recently announced that they will have an electric lineup but they did not say we're going to cancel everything else. They're basically going to have, the plan is, and that's what I understood from their announcement, they want to have an electric variant of every model, just like they were pushing for years to have a hybrid variant of each model, which they are very close to getting there. But as far as canceling gasoline cars, I don't know. I hope I never live to see that day where we no longer have gasoline cars, although some places like Europe, California, some other are really optimistic they're going to be able to do that very soon. But we've been around for a few years here. We have a little bit of experience. Until it happens, it didn't happen. You know what I'm saying? So there's a lot to just canceling out gasoline cars. And let's go, for me, if that day comes too quick and their infrastructure is not there, there's nothing wrong with the horse and buggy. That's my choice before an electric car and no charging stations everywhere, or better technology than the current one. That's just my opinion. Okay, so let's take another question here. So One Yen Gang says, I bought a 07 Tundra 4.7 or 34,000 miles. That is one good find there, sir. And plan to drive it across the country doing YouTube videos. I changed all fluids, timing belt, and drive belt. Anything else should I prepare for? Honestly, just a general inspection. Make sure your tires are good. Make sure your brakes are good. And don't just start this car and start driving. Drive this car for a couple months before I hope your trip is not tomorrow. You want to drive, because usually cars with low miles, they're not used to driving. There might be some hidden issues behind them just from age. Remember, this is a 14-year-old truck. Bushings might be worn out. Seals might be worn out. But because they was never driven that much, now you go drive it across country and things start falling apart. Make sure you drive it as much as possible for the next month or two or before your trip. So if anything does happen, you have the time to fix it before you go. And otherwise, really, you bought the right truck. This is a really solid engine, which you're never going to hear anything other than the timing belt. They really don't have any other issues. Do replace the spark plugs, though. This truck has this mileage, probably had very short trips all the time. Do replace the spark plugs and have a safe trip. And let me know what channel you're on so I can be watching. That sounds like a very interesting cross-country trip. So let's go to the next question. So do you know of any recent white pearl white paint recall for the Camry? Yes. I don't quote me on the models, because I have to look at a piece of paper to know exactly what model it affects. Toyota has had problems with super white paint. Not the white pearl, but the super white paint. Stuff from debris in it, premature wearing, all kinds of problems with the white paint. Contact your dealership, give them your VIN number, and they'll be able to tell you if that applies to your car or what's the process. Because if it's something very minor, do you really want your car to be painted, worked on by a body shop for a tiny little imperfection? That's then becomes the real question there. All right, so Steve says 2000 Camry has a rear light failure warning light display. When I press the brake pedal, changed both brake light bulbs and the third brake bulb, and this did not fix the problem. Steve, do me a favor, and this one was one of my favorite cars, and I know a lot about these, worked a lot on these. The wires going in the trunk. The wires going in the trunk. Hold the wire, open the wire loom, and you'll see some of them broken. That's just the way with these, and you'll get an eternal light failure light on. Fix those lights, fix those wires, and life will be good. The other thing is, if the wires are not broken, which I almost can guarantee you they are, but if they are not, make sure you put the right bulbs, because we've seen cases where if I can't really recall the number of the bulbs that go in the Camry. I'm going to say 3157. Don't quote me on that. But if you there was two bulbs that had a different resistance. If you put the wrong one, you could actually set that sensor off, even though the lights work. So make sure they're the right bulbs. If you're not sure, just go buy them from the dealership. The dealership will only have the right bulbs. Actually, they'll go by a part number, not by a number on the bulb. But that's the only one that I would think about. But the wire broken, like as soon as you open the trunk, you'll see the wire on the driver's side of the hinge. You see a wire running. Open it, pull on the wires, you'll see at least 2 are broken or hanging by a thread, and that'll throw that sensor off. Lastly, if everything else checks out okay, the sensor itself might be bad. And usually they get water in them, and that's the end of that. But that's the least common one, especially on a 2000 Camry. So let's move on to the next question. So let's read this one. I have a 2016 Highlander. Do you suggest dealer doing transmission fluid and filter or a local transmission shop? Transmission shops, do these still exist? I'd much rather you have the dealership do that and don't replace the filter. Just replace the fluid and have a nice day. Transmission shops, not all of them, but I have a funny feeling about transmission shops. Transmission shops make a living on transmissions breaking. They tend to overdo things. They take a transmission apart. Oh, you have debris, and now we start rolling into this car is way too new. I don't know of a transmission shop that builds those 6 speeds. They're a little complicated. They're very reliable, but they're not simple inside. I would much rather you just go to the dealership, have the fluid replaced, don't worry about that filter, and call it a day. I don't know about the local transmission shop. You don't need a transmission shop to replace fluid. But if you find another independent mechanic, even if it's not the dealership, if you have problems with the dealership, I understand. If you have a trusted local mechanic independent, just make sure they use WS fluid and you should have no issues. Okay. Let's read this one. I think this one, everybody will appreciate this question. Thank you, David, for this question. 17 Camry with a 2.5 4-cylinder scan tool shows P2610. And I will write this in the comments, so in case you didn't hear me, so you would see this code. So, this code is one that drove so many people in the dealership, it was not even funny. First thing, Sir David, some of these cars had a software update that fixes that issue. And when you read the description of this code, and so many people have fell for this and wasted money unnecessarily, it will tell you this is an internal, as the code says, this is an internal problem with the computer. The computer is not powering down when the car shuts down. And that problem, in the repair manual, it will tell you, replace the computer. Step number 1, replace the engine computer. Step number 2, hope for the best. That's it. There's no really diagnostic procedure for this. The problem is there are 2 things that cause this issue. Number 1, aftermarket accessories. Number 2, aftermarket accessories. It's as simple as that. Let's go a little deeper in this so you guys would know this in case you run into it. Remote starters, they keep the computer alive when the computer does not know how to recognize them. And that was an error in programming. And I wouldn't call it an error in programming. Actually, I retract that. And I say they did not think of the aftermarket, because Toyota doesn't design cars for modifications. They design cars to be the way they are from 0 miles to 400,000 miles, and then life's good. But if you have that code, if you ever have that code, the first thing you need to do is look for TSBs. You're going to find a TSB for software update. Now, right off the bat, right off the memory, I can't tell you if yours is affected by that. But if you ever get that code, the first thing you need to look at, do I have aftermarket accessories, specifically remote starters? Erase the code and drive it again. If it happens after 2-3 weeks, you have a problem with that remote start. It's not a compatible one with this car. Toyota did make some software updates for a lot of models to circumvent this issue from happening, but it's not an actual, don't go replacing an ECU ever, period. You need a software update, and do report it to your dealer so Toyota would work on making that software update, because this does not affect anything with the car. I'm almost to a point where if there's no software update and you don't want to fix it, don't do anything. Just keep erasing the code because it's not an issue. And that's, I don't understand why is there even such a code. It doesn't make sense. So 2008 Forerunner gas gauge drops when, hold on, I'm trying to read this. I need glasses. I'm realizing this reading comments and doing this. 2008 Forerunner gas gauge drops from below half tank, just started, has 260K on it. Any ideas? So if I'm understanding your question correct, when you get to half, gas gauge drops to 0 when you get below half tank. This one is probably a sender, and it's not a common one. With Toyotas, we usually don't have problems with gauges. But it sounds like a sender. I would take the sender out and test it, like bench test it if you would. Resistance senders are very simple. It could be that the last portion of that sender is not reading right. That would be the first thing I would look at and go from there. If you need it, just it might be part of the whole fuel pump, which is a shame. I wish that they come separate on some of them, but it might be part of the whole fuel pump assembly, if you would, to replace it and call it a day. Mike D, thank you so much for your super chat, sir. 2009 Tacoma, rear passenger wheel area squeaks. No squeaking when I push on the rear or push sideways. When e-brake is on and push back and forth, it squeaks. That is a very common one. That's actually common on a lot of cars, not just the Tacoma. Here's what you're going to do. Take the rear drum off. That's when you, if I understand correctly, you're only hearing the squeaking when the brakes, the parking brake is applied and you rock the car back and forth. So take your drum off. First, brake clean everything down. Where the here are your two shoes. You're going to see the shoe has a backing plate, which is like a metal part, and then the actual friction material. Right at the edge of the friction material, you're going to see a 90-degree angle. Take some sandpaper, coarse, whatever you have laying around. Don't go buy any expensive sandpaper. Just round that edge off. Just instead of it being a 90 degree, just make it rounded. And call it a day. That's about it. Another thing it could be, if that doesn't do it, back off the parking brake a little bit. It's just that that's too tight. And take that same sandpaper and kind of clean up the surface of the drum on the inside, and that's about it. That should take care of it. But otherwise, it's not really a problem. It's just the brake material on the shoe is making noise, a squeaking noise against the drum. Gary, thank you so much for your super chat, sir. Third owner, RX 350, 119K, no records of transmission fluid change. Is the transmission fluid safe? Also transfer case and differential, you're absolutely safe. Don't worry about that. Transmission, you're kinda on the edge here. I would do a single drain and fill and call it a day. Don't do multiples, or definitely don't do a flush. And that would be the most I would do. But before you do that, take a small sample out of the fluid. WS fluid will be dark by normal. It's not bright red like you're used to. It is normally a little darker, but what I want you to do is take a small sample, just drain a little bit, shine a light at it. Do you still see somewhat of a red color? If you do, go ahead and replace it. You're good. If you see brown or dark brown and the fluid feels gritty, leave it alone. If all of a sudden the place, like say you're working in your garage, and all of a sudden the whole garage smells like burning, definitely leave it alone at that point, because that's burned fluid and that's actually not good. But if it's dark in color, but you shine a light on it, it has a hint of red, you're all good. Replace it, drain and fill one time, call it a day. All right, folks. So we're going to wrap up the live stream. I will take 2 more questions. Just randomly, I will scroll through it. I wish we could sit here for 6 hours and get every single common question, but that's not possible. My voice is already running out. But let's take actually 3. We have a super chat. So Pablo says, do you think Toyota could be testing their new fast charging battery to make a simpler hybrid where we could Select engine or electric manually, making it more affordable and simple. So Toyota's been talking about the solid state battery, and there's a lot of claims on that. And that would be really a game changer if you could charge the batteries faster, where you can stop at a gas station, charge it for, I don't know, hypothetically, and somebody knows a lot about this than I do, will say, well, what are you talking about? It would be nice if you could charge it in like 5 minutes and be on your way. Kind of similar to how gasoline cars function. You stop a few minutes, fill it up with gas, and have a nice day. But they're working on the solid state battery, and that the promise with that is that will fix that exact issue. So hopefully we will get to that at some point. But as far as anything official or specific information, I don't really have any. Toyota is very secretive with their stuff. Mr. Lau, thank you for your super chat. My Corolla 2015 is at 60,000 miles and 6 years. I'm planning to change CVT fluid, differential fluid, brake fluid, and engine coolant. Are they correct? Anything else? There's no differential fluid. When you replace your transmission fluid, you already replace your differential fluid as well. Replace the CVT fluid. Please use Toyota CVT fluid because that's the correct fluid and it's not worth risking it with aftermarket. Brake fluid, you're good. Engine coolant, I think you're a little past it, but you're good as well. Anything else? Not really. Check your filters, check brakes, tires, and everything else. If everything is good, good. If it's not, take care of it, and life is good. So, folks, we will take the last question. And as the normal, what do you call it? The tradition of the channel, if you would, last is always first. So I will take the last question, which is Jonathan. Before we take the question, though, I want to say one thing. So you guys see Andrew GYNY. Andrew is a Nissan technician, which now became a Toyota technician. He answers a lot of questions on the channel through the comments. I just want to say, guys, huge shout out to Andrew because he's a guy with his heart in the right place. He truly tries to help people when possible. I try to get to the comments as much as possible, but he is someone who is trustworthy. He's a technician. He has experience, and he has the good heart to help people out. And huge shout out to him. I really appreciate everything you do, Andrew. I hope you heard this part in the live stream. I don't know him personally. I actually got to know him through the channel. It's a pleasure, Andrew, and thank you for everything you do. You have your heart in the right place. Helping people is more important than subscribers and viewers and all that mess. Let's just help people. The world would be a better place if we all help each other. So, Jonathan Pinto, that's the last question. Let's take it. Is it normal that the oil pressure light blinks less than a second at startup 2014 RAV4 2ARFE, less than 38,000 miles? So you're going to get that quick flicker as the oil pressure builds up. Depending how long the car have sat, you will actually, if you leave this car parked for a very long time, like a month plus, when you start it, you're going to see that oil light on for a good second or two until the oil builds up. And that's completely normal, nothing I would worry about. Check your oil level. If your oil level is good, life is good. As long as that light does not flicker when you come to a stop or when you make turns at slow speeds, that indicates low oil level. But if you checked it, you shouldn't have an issue. That's completely normal, nothing to worry about. Folks, thank you so much for watching the live stream. I will say one thing before we move on, and I know some of you are leaving already. Don't be in a hurry. The email situation have escalated again. My fault. Forerunner series fault. I hope you like the new Forerunner series. If you have sent me an email, number one, I apologize for the delays. Number two, I will respond to your email. Just give me a little bit of time. If anybody of you have an urgent question, please leave a comment. If I missed your question today, leave a comment on this video or any video on the channel. My channel is to help you get your question answered the best way I can through my experience working for Toyota. So if you have any questions, leave them in the comments anywhere, and I will get back to you as soon as I can. And the emails, I'm working on it. Promise, I've said that a lot. But guys, may the Lord bless you and keep you. And you guys have a wonderful day. And thank you so much for watching my live stream. You have a good day.